Okay. I am calling the Champaign County Board Special Finance Committee of the Whole to order at 6:37 on the 29th of September, 2016. Would you please call the roll?
Alex? Here. Anderson? Berkson? Carter? Cowart? Esri? Harper? Harrison? Hartke?
Here.
Heiser? Jay? Maxwell? McGuire? Michaels? Mitchell? Quisenberry? Rector? Rosales? Schrader? Schwartz? Petrie?
Present.
And Weibel.
He's here. We have a quorum present. A motion to approve the agenda, please.
So moved.
Mr. Quisenberry, a second. Mr. Heiser? All right. I'll ask for changes, so I don't see much on the agenda, but any changes? All right. Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. We have one slip for public participation this evening. Mr. Sutton? Just a reminder, 5 minutes.
I'll try to be shorter than that. I voted today, which is nice, and I voted against the 0.25%, but would, in my rounds to get out the vote, change that to support it if this body were to declare that the jail changes to put in 30 beds of mental and I don't know how many of detox within the jail, if they put that in C and put the nursing home first and the county-based, community-based medical and detox center outside the jail. Bypass the jail, what's it called, diversion, so that people from the community who had maybe been in jail and welcomed that respite or protection or whatever, they might go and find services at any time of day available to them without the stigma of having been put in jail. It was asked whether I didn't like parents having physical contact with their children. And that's the reason I'm here tonight, because I've tried for at least 2 years to get the sheriff and his, Sheriff Walsh and his deputy Voges, Captain Voges, to allow the use of the single room that's used for, I suppose, training and a lot of other things. And I don't think that was the reason. The fact that that was too busy was not the reason. That it was never, that contact visitations were never allowed at all in that. And now to have the film that I saw with an inmate holding up a child, to sell the thought is too much for me. So I wish there were more programs in the jail, a release with identification for it, and so forth. I'd like to see the pretrial services tried again for more than a week or two, whatever it was, and that some judge has the courage to do a risk assessment. I know that there's a liability there. I I'd like greater emphasis than we're putting on diversion around the jail. I think it'd be a lot cheaper, a lot less expensive than this. So I would put what was in C up in B, nursing home first, and then community-based mental and detox services. And finally, if they want to do something with the downtown jail, and that costs money, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sutton. Seeing nobody else in the audience and having no more slips, I will close public participation. Is there any communication from county board members? Ms. Michaels.
Just real quickly, Mr. Anderson is absent due to his son's parent-teacher conferences tonight. So
Thank you.
he would have been here.
Thank you. And Mr. Harper has joined us. Any other communications? Okay, seeing none. Since this is a special meeting of the Committee of the Whole for Finance, I am now going to turn the meeting over to the Chair of the Finance Committee, Mr. Alex.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We'll start with the County Administrator and the Deputy County Administrator for Finance. Mr. Schneider, Ms. Ogden, would you like to take us through your recommendations?
I'm going to defer to Ms. Ogden to walk through the document. You should have in front of you at the desk the decision points that will be considered tonight.
These are the same decision points that were presented to you on Tuesday night. As I indicated, the General Corporate Fund has a revenue to expenditure deficit of $133,230. There is $150,000 currently budgeted in FY17 for ADA expenditures, which are required for compliance with the county's settlement agreement with the Department of Justice. As you know, the county financial policies require the budget to be balanced, and that the budget is considered balanced when the sum of estimated net revenues and appropriated fund balances equal appropriations. Therefore, the two decision points that you have before you tonight are either authorization of appropriation of the fund balance, in the amount of $133,230 for capital expenditures associated with ADA improvements, or authorization of appropriation of the fund balance in the amount of $150,000, which would also allow for an increase in appropriations for planning and zoning in the amount of $16,770 for temporary wages in order to assist with the IEPA MS4 requirements. Do you want me to go on to the nursing home?
Please, yeah, let's cover both.
The revenue to expenditure deficit for the nursing home is $160,701. The Nursing Home Board of Directors approved this budget at its meeting on August 8th. They also recognized that the census was budgeted, revenues were budgeted for 180 residents, and they directed the budget to be prepared with contract nursing appropriated at $332,000. The budget, again, does not meet the county's requirements for a balanced budget. And as I stated Tuesday night, the nursing home does not have a fund balance, and there is also no appropriation for capital in this budget. So there are limited options to balance this budget. The decision points that you have before you are to decrease contract nursing appropriations to $171,300. And just to remind you, the nursing home has not used contract nursing for the past 5 months. In January, they spent approximately $77,000, and February through April, that amount has declined incrementally. In April, they spent about $13,000. The other option for balancing the budget would be to increase the census in order to allow for an increase in revenues.
Thank you, Ms. Ogden. So just to clarify, what was the total contract nursing expenditure this last year for the nursing home?
For 2015?
For 2015.
Oh,
No, sorry, 2016.
the total that was budgeted?
No, the total that was spent. You said 40. 77,000 down to,
Yeah,
You
I don't
have any idea
have
what the
all
total
the,
is?
I don't have, I mean, I can't tell you off the top of my head what the numbers were.
sounds on the order of 170. I mean, it's certainly significantly less than 332,000.
Correct, yes.
And sounds like probably even less than 171,000.
I believe
if
it, yes,
started
the
out
total would be less
If it
than
started at
100.
77 and was gone by May
In
or April.
April, there was 13,000
Okay,
spent.
so that sounds like somewhere in the $100,000 to $120,000 range probably.
It was significantly less than the 170,000.
Okay, thank you. At this point, I guess I'll open the floor for discussion and/or a motion on the general corporate fund decision points. Ms. Schwartz?
Actually, on the nursing home, I kind of changed my mind from yesterday, so
Okay.
my thinking is day before yesterday. No, I changed it yesterday. On the contract nursing, here's my concern. If they need contract nursing, which we all hope they don't, they have to have it. There are state mandates on how much staffing needs to happen. If, God forbid, the county board won't have the 15 votes to do a budget amendment, we'll be in trouble. So when I'm doing cost benefit, I don't think they're going to spend what they don't need. So if we're going to allocate 32,000, and they won't need it, then they won't use it. So I'm not worried about giving them authorization to spend, and then they'll just recklessly spend it. I think they'll spend it if they need it. On the other hand, if they won't have it and they'll need to spend it, and county board won't have the 15 votes, I don't know what's going to happen. So because of that, even though I hate to say, well, because we all know that just saying that let's increase the census is wishful thinking. It may increase, it may not. It might look just it's budgeted, it's balanced budget, but it may not. But on the other hand, I would hate to cut contract nursing, which, as I said, they're not going to spend it if they don't need it, and if they will need it, we have to be able to provide it. So my thinking is to, as much as I hate to say that, is to increase the census prediction and make it look budget balanced, even though it may or may not be.
Tammy, do you know what the increase in the census would have to be to absorb the 133,000? I'm sorry, the 160,000?
I think it was one private pay and two Medicaid.
Yeah,
That's
it
what you said.
depends on what where you allocate that increase to. I know, for if you were to add a VA resident, I believe it was $89,000, and I don't know. Right now, there are 8 VA residents, but that number fluctuates. So again, I would defer to the nursing home in terms of saying what they realistically thought that combination could be in order to.
Has the
come up
nursing
with
home
those
board
revenues.
expressed a suggestion as to how to deal with the 160,000?
I was not at that meeting, but I don't believe that they wanted the budget to be sent to the county board with any changes to the census or the contract nursing.
Well, that's too bad because we got to have a balanced budget. Ms. Bergson?
Rachel has certainly changed my mind. Excuse me. Rachel's changed my mind. I hadn't thought of that, but I think it's certainly very important.
I mean, the budget is an educated guess. We're talking about 160,000 out of a $14.5 million budget. I'm not sure it makes a whole lot of difference. I'm not sure it makes a whole lot of difference where we find it. Any other comments, questions? Mr. Quisberry?
Yeah, I would have said coming into this I was interested in reducing the nursing amount, but I follow Rachel's argument, and I believe that is a more prudent way to go.
If the census is down, they're not going to spend the nurse. They're not going to have the nursing expenses. I think it's a wash either way. Any other comments? Yes, Tammy.
Actually, I looked at the numbers that Scott provided me, and I was incorrect in saying that was significantly less than the 170,000. They were at 164,000.
Got it.
Correct.
But all of that was in the first quarter, of the first
4 months.
third of the year. Okay. Anybody else? Diane?
Question, and I apologize for not being here for part of this, but in this nursing home fund and the budget, does that include part of the repayment for the air conditioner system or whatever it was, the boilers rather, or any of that, or is that just kind of sitting there for a wait and see?
It does not include repayment of that.
It includes the bond service, right, but not the boiler.
Yes, the debt service is included.
Mr. Wobble, you look like you want to say something.
Since you insist, I will say something. Well, the boilers were paid by extraneous money, a gift from from the power lines falling on us. So I wasn't aware. I don't think there's been discussion about talking about paying it back. So
Yeah, it's a loan.
was there? Okay, I wasn't paying attention. Anyway, I'm not done yet. I do support Rachel's idea. I think it's running a nursing home is a tough business, certainly, and it's unpredictable. And in this day and age, it's even more unpredictable. I think, why don't we prepare a budget that's got a little more flexibility to deal with those issues? So I would back up what Rachel was saying.
Sorry, Ms. Michaels.
Although I can understand some of the comments about increasing the sentences, I really hate to inflate a number that we know is not going to be there. I would rather be a little bit closer on what the budget is for the contract nursing or something to that effect, because if it doesn't come out of payroll, then it's contract nursing. So that to me would be more of an offset to that. But I really hate to inflate that number. I don't know that we've seen that number for a long, long time, and I don't see it changing. So for me personally, I have a hard time inflating a number just to make it balance.
Gives rise to the question, where are we now? Or Mr. Harkey, were you going to?
No, I'm
okay.
ready to make a motion.
Sorry, do we know what the census is now?
I asked Scott for updated numbers because if you remember in the budget document, those numbers were the average through May, I believe. May year-to-date average was 173.5. The numbers he provided me yesterday were July year-to-date 175, August 177.8, and September through the 26th 179.7.
Thank you. I'm going to ask that we defer the nursing home here for just a minute so we can go in the order that was on the presentation. Are there any comments about the general corporate fund proposal? We have two options there. One is to, the way you read this is essentially we are calling $150,000 of ADA expenditures fund balance. We can call that fund balance expenditure, which doesn't count against us in terms of balancing the budget. So the two options here are either to basically take $133,000 and to fill the deficit essentially, or take the full 150, or lay off the full 150 of the ADA against the fund balance and free up the 16,770 for temporary wages for planning and zoning. Mr. Webble.
I would move that we authorize appropriation of the fund balance in the amount of $150,000 for capital expenditures associated with ADA improvements, and increase appropriations to planning and zoning in the amount of $16,770 for temporary wages in order to assist with IEPA MS4 requirements.
Ms. Bergson, was that a second? Any comments or questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Oh, yes, sorry. Yes, sir.
I see John back there, and I serve on that ELUC committee. Was that 16,770? Was that enough to cover what you were this MS4 deal? Okay.
That would be a big help. Yeah. It doesn't cover what I asked for, but as I said the other night, any amount would be a big help.
Thanks, Dan. Anybody else on this? Mr. Quisenberry.
Yeah, I just want to go on the record because I unfortunately had to leave early on Tuesday to say that I think it's a mistake for the board to not address the request from the county clerk for the software developer that was before us that night. I unfortunately left before you must have come to the conclusion that it didn't need to be part of the discussion. I hope that you all recognize that it's going to cost more in the long term, and that we can find a way to maybe readdress it in the near future.
I would hope that would be the case. Anybody else on the general corporate fund decision points and the motion on the floor? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Now we'll move on to the nursing home. Further discussion or motions? Mr. Harkey.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would move the second motion that we deal with this budget imbalance by estimating an increase in population, and I could speak to that if it gets a second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Harkey.
Yeah, two things. One, we have had significantly higher population in the past. We have averaged 190 in years. So again, it is as always a guess as to how many exactly are going to be there and what that balance is going to be. The second thing is I'd like to point to what Rachel mentioned, because we did find out that the actual number is going to be close to that for this year, would be close to that 170,000. As we come up on the holiday season, that's usually when we have to increase our contract nursing amount, because people just take the time off then. That's when people have call-ins and things like that. So usually around the holiday season, you'll see a slight spike in contract nursing. So that number will probably be a little higher by the end of the year, and I would certainly rather have us pre-thought and have the money already allocated in our thinking than have to come back for a budget amendment next year.
Thank you, Mr. Harkey. Any other comments or questions or discussion? Mr. Quisenberry.
Yeah, and to add on to my support for Rachel's logic, I will also say that not doing it this way I feel, is tending to try to create an artificial crisis in the future. If there is some spike in contract nursing, if you've been here over the last 6 years like I have, you know that number was under control at one point, and then it went crazy again because of staffing issues. And so looking at just what's going on this year is not a comfortable way for me to plan for the future. I'd much rather know what the average has been over the last 5 years, last 10 years before I would sign on to that. So I think this proposal is better.
Thank you, Mr. Quisenberry. Anybody else? Mr. Maxwell.
I understand the rationality of appropriating this money at this time, so to avoid a supermajority or 15 vote for an additional appropriation or change of the budget down the road. I think we can't entirely rule out the possibility we may have to do that anyway if we get into some sort of unforeseen bind with respect to mechanicals or other capital issues at the home.
Thank you, Mr. Maxwell. Mr. Harper.
Kind of a question for Chris or Josh on that labor committee. Did when we raised the salaries for the low end to living, the cost of living, did that help the turnover rates?
Josh, you want to tackle that one? I don't know the answer to it.
You know, the turnover rates, I don't know exactly what that's at right now. I know it's still not where we want it to be, but one thing you can look at the fact that the contract nursing has gone down really low, and that usually happens because we are at full staff. So yes, I think there is some rotation of staff, but they're maintaining that rotation at a higher level.
Thank you. Anybody else? I'm sorry. Rick.
Just a quick comment on that. I believe the turnover rate's somewhere around 59% still, so it's pretty high, but they've just been doing a better job of retaining people.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder. Anybody else on this issue? I guess I'll say my piece. I don't like the idea of inflating the census, but I also don't think we're going to spend anywhere close to $332,000 in contract nursing, given that we haven't spent any in the last 9 months. So I think either solution is acceptable, and I will support Mr. Harkey's motion. Anybody else? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Aye. Motion carries. I believe we have fulfilled our obligation to give direction to the county administrator with respect to the general corporate fund and the nursing home fund. Tammy, do you have anything else for us?
I do not.
Thank you. Seeing no further business, I would ask for a motion to adjourn. Moved, and do I have a second? Second. Without objection, I'll declare us adjourned. Thank you.